On behalf of the entire department, I want to thank you for coming today to celebrate the wonderful creative writing we have here at TCU. We are lucky to have Ray Gonzalez with us today, and I'm honored to introduce him. Ray Gonzalez is one of the most important figures in contemporary literature. He is the author of 10 books of poetry, including 5 from Boa Editions, The Heat of Arrivals, Cabata Centaura, The Hawk Temple at Tierra Grande, and Consideration of the Guitar, New and Selected Poems. 2 more books of poems are forthcoming this summer. He's also the author of 3 collections of essays, one, The Underground Heart, which won the 2003 Texas Institute of Letters Award, and a new book of essays that came out this fall, Renaming the Earth, that is a finalist for the Minnesota Book Awards, I believe. He has written 2 collections of short stories, The Ghost of John Wayne and Circling the Tortilla Dragon. He's edited in a number of anthologies, been the poetry editor for the Bloomsbury Review for 22 years, and founded Luna, a journal of poetry and translation. Ray's list of literary accomplishments is stunning, but he's just as brilliant as a person. He's a font of literary and worldly wisdom, and once you get to know him, he's hilarious. Ask him about when he drove a taxi, or listening to the Allman Brothers, or ask him about Bob Dylan. Ask him anything, because he knows, and his answers are always fascinating. He's been one of the most influential figures in my life. His presence has not only shown me how to passionately engage literature, how to plumb the depths of what we read and the ideas we write about, but the variety of ways he encounters the world around us is a profound example of fully living life. Please help me in welcoming Ray Gonzalez.
Thank the English department here at the university for inviting me here, for sponsoring this. And of course, Alex, my former student, very proud of Alex. He reminds me about the very honest and important relationship between a student and a teacher. But as writers, we're among peers, and to me, that's the most important thing. And I couldn't say that without the things I've shared with Alex, the things Alex has shared with me. So again, thank you for having me here. I'm originally from El Paso, so it's great to be back in Texas. It was 10 degrees yesterday when I left Minneapolis, which is undergoing the coldest winter in 15 years. And when it hits 20 degrees there, all the weathermen say there's a warm front passing through. So it's been quite a 3 or 4 months, and it will continue probably for another 3 or 4 months. I teach at the University of Minnesota, a thriving MFA program there, and I say that because it's a huge university, and yet within that large university, as here, when you work with writers, again, you're among peers, and I think that's very important. If you're the teacher, there are certain things that, responsibilities you have, certain things you define, but again, it's that magic relationship among writers that's very, very important. So I want to congratulate all the students that are here today and all the ones that are winning the awards. Again, it reminds me of that very special relationship that we all have. I didn't know that Alex was teaching one of my books in one of his classes, The Underground Heart. In a way, this is kind of last minute. I'm mostly going to read poetry, but I think this is a chance to share several passages from one of my favorite essays in The Underground Heart. And again, it reminds me about coming back to Texas. Again, I'm originally from El Paso, which this big state is like, hundreds and hundreds of miles west of here. A totally different environment, a totally different part of Texas, a totally different world, I think. So it's a chance to kind of reflect coming back home. This is from a long, long essay called Which of My Hands on the Pictographs. It's originally about going on a tour at a state park just east of El Paso, the Waco Tanks State Park there. And it contains the largest collection of pictographs. And again, pictographs are ancient paintings on the rocks themselves of different colors, and as opposed to petroglyphs and hieroglyphics and things like that, which could be actual carvings on rocks. So again, pictographs are artistic paintings. And a huge collection throughout the state park on different rocks and caverns and cliffs, and some of them are more accessible than others, and of course it was very hot that day. And it's amazing, most of the ancient masks, even if archaeologists and different scholars have identified what they are and where they come from, many of them still remain unidentified, thousands of them. And the most recent ones are from the mid-19th century, mostly painted by some of the Apache people in the area. So I went through there and wrote this long essay. And at first I thought I was going to be kind of like doing a tourist essay and reflecting on a place that I had never been to before, even though I grew up in El Paso. But it instantly became really a meditation on writing and on being a poet. So I want to extract a few passages that, in a way, touch upon all of that, going beyond just describing and exploring some of these paintings on some of these rocks and caves. The scientist advises me to look at the extreme orderliness and predictability of individual handwriting, and says this is due to the mode of generating and controlling the movement. He wants me to take a good look when I'm writing a poem at what my hand is actually doing as I continue to write the lines, as I continue to write and write. For a good laugh, he wants me to slow down the rate at which I sign my name and see if I recognize my signature. What about slowing down the poem in my familiar handwriting in my journals? What if I compose a poem in the computer? How do I slow that down? Where do I sign my name? How many drafts do I need to throw away? Did something whisper which ones to keep? How many Folsom Point arrowheads can I collect here and get away with it? The guide says those arrowheads usually mean mammoth and giant bison bones are nearby. The hunt of 8,000 or 9,000 years ago having taken place near these rocks. The tired hunters dragging their prize into the cool shadows of these canyons. Signs of a successful hunt blossoming in red, yellow, and white paintings all over the caves. Yet the scientist says handwriting and animals weren't always around for me to depend on and dream about. It comes back to writing the poem. And a different passage. There is a hand. We call it memory. It closes, opens, and speaks. There is a river that flows and lets us cross time and time again. Everything depends on this river of memory. There is the mud and the barbed wire border we can't touch. There are people and mountains and canyons, cottonwoods and rattlesnakes, hidden hands watching it all, tired of rubbing the rosary as if the river is going to lower its level and the drowning victims are going to walk out of the water and embrace their loved ones. I ran my fingers over the fossils I found in the washed-out arroyo, the rough spirals of shells embedded in the rock to make me see with my fingers, traced a resting place to the sharpest vision of the pictographs in my dream. The moment I see a wrinkled hand drop the pine needle brush into the pot of red paint, and white drops that fell on the fingers across the rough surface, bringing me to my next poem. The researcher concludes, hominid hands did shape tools for striking and piercing and cutting, did ignite and control fire, did fashion clothing and habitation, and did domesticate animals and cultivate plants. I wrote a poem. But with their hands and developed brain and greatly increased eye-brain hand neural circuitry, hominids may well have invented language, not just expanding the naming function that some animals possess, but finding true language with syntax as well as vocabulary in gestural activity. Now there is finally reason to understand my poem, simply to hold it without cause or complaint. That day I felt the intricate patterns on the walls and one or two edges cut my fingertips. The drawings and the words were there. I pressed harder and saw blood appear across a pigment of color in the old creation. I climbed up here to give the ancient sight what it had waited for, a sense of hope as I ran an open palm over the map hidden on the wall. The horse and rider leaping over the sun to wake fire in their legs, made me say 2 or 3 words about the rock I was trying to hold up with my stringing hands, trying to hold up the poem. Of course, the very first rule visitors are given on a sheet of paper as they enter the park: do not touch the paintings on the walls. I'll begin by reading a few tiny little prose poem pieces. This is called It Is Good. It is good to wish you were somewhere else, the old bridge holding long enough to let you cross. The first flower you knew was a flower glowing against your baby face. It is good to get there and see if your tiny shoes still fit. How it rained on your first birthday and you thought the water pounding the windows was your mother taking you out of your crib, bound for a place you knew before you were born. I lived in San Antonio for several years. Went to school at Texas State University in San Marcos. And this actually took place on a drive, I think, after class one day, heading back down to San Antonio. The fox. I almost hit it as it crossed the road at night, its extended tail a slim banner of red that streaked in front of my car. The fox vanished in the tall grass, never turned to my headlights or paused in fear. The first fox I saw near my house appeared in silent ambush, a quickness that came near me without waking the need to hold an edge, a decoy against capture. My luck of driving too slow, a motion toward knowing how the fox lived so close to its skills, so near my senses as it avoided the territory where dying is permitted. As I drove and passed by, I thought a pure apology if I had hit it, how I avoided the long snout of a fresh beginning, excused for stepping on the gas as the fox became a soundless witness behind me. In contrast to that, and I could go on all day about stereotyped Minnesota stories, so we won't get started on that. If you've ever seen the film Fargo, it's all true. It's all true. Also, Grumpy Old Man, if you've ever seen Grumpy Old Man, it's all true. But one major difference is the beautiful area up around Lake Superior. Quite an amazing place up there by the Boundary Waters and wilderness and rough coastal area up along the western side of Lake Superior, north of Duluth. And this takes place near Knife River, Minnesota, where every year there's a huge migration of monarchs. They even go that far north. And this was even in the paper, so my wife were up there in the area, exploring the area at a different park, and we went over to see this. This is called Dead Monarchs, Knife River, Minnesota. Dozens of them lie dead along the agate beach, the cold rainy day hiding the cause behind fog. We walk slowly across a shore of stones smoothed down from generations of searching the lake. Sifting colorful stones in our hands, we spot one butterfly, then another, and soon count 40, 50, and wonder what happened. Getting wet with the sound of crunching feet on stone as we hear the cries of seabirds circling the small island across the lake. The birds enter the fog, screeching out of their rocks as if something is going to end. We scan the island with binoculars, hesitate to gather so many dead monarchs in our bags. 1 hour later, as we start for the car, our pockets full of agates, we leave the butterflies alone. Their bodies folded into wet fans sticking to the rocks, others flapping slowly in the windy raindrops. Every few yards, another wing. The pattern of spots like a canvas an artist forgot to complete. Alex and I were visiting a museum earlier this morning, and I believe one of the paintings had a snake in it, so I can't help but read this. Again, back to the desert southwest of the El Paso, southern New Mexico area. The house. There was a little house in El Paso full of burning snakes. The day I walked in, they were on paintings, posters, dozens of flaming reptiles adorning the walls. I stood among smoking fangs, trying to catch a strike. There was an enormous carpet with coiled diamondbacks patterned its entire length, the rug covering one wall to hide the entrance to the other side. There was a print of a man with 7 rattlers wrapped around his body. I stepped closer but never got there because a snake finally struck, letting me see how far I had entered. The snake's lunge of the dark telling me I had been gone for a very long time. I walked out with my hair longer, not knowing how to stop the pictures and close that door. The bright wall of reptiles humming as if the desert had never been crossed. 2 pin marks on my leg, the entrance to the white room of eternity. This laughing moment cut off by dozens of rattlers pouring out of the house. Summer rain washing them into the yard where a silent old man stood with his arms full of snakes. And some recent newer poems. One thing that I only begin to touch upon in the Underground Heart, and it's a separate long essay that I won't go into now, is the New Mexico and its history with the atomic bomb that a lot of people don't know about. There's even an atomic bomb museum in Albuquerque, and there's a whole essay about my adventures there. But the very first bomb that a lot of people don't know about actually was at the Trinity site in New Mexico, about 200 miles north of El Paso in 1945. My parents were in high school at the time in El Paso, and they said that they saw a bright light that morning, as many other El Pasoans did, but of course they didn't know about it. It was top secret. They didn't find out about Trinity or Los Alamos or anything that happened there until years later. This is called Trinity. I was born 7 years after the first atomic bomb, not Hiroshima, but the one from July 1945. Trinity site, New Mexico, 200 miles north from where my mother gave birth to her only son. When I first opened my eyes, the white sun greeted me, and I have been blind ever since. I was born 7 years too late for the World War, but my father served at sea before I could swim. I've been afraid of water ever since, though a family photo shows the war is over, and my father is very young in his white uniform, a tattoo of Blue Panther rising on his right arm. This next poem is about something I actually saw the last time I was in El Paso. It must have been about, 105 degrees on that day. And I'm looking out the window in my mother's house, and I saw a mud wasp nest outside of the house, on the outside part of the window. And so I'm looking at it, and it's bristling with wasps. And this is what I saw. This is called The Shortest Poem. The shortest poem is about love and the blue jay in the backyard, though the red cardinal wakes us each morning. The shortest line is about loss and not about the red wings of memory, or the hummingbird appearing before the mud wasp nest on the windowsill, hovering there for a few seconds, its quick disappearance unnoticed by the fist of bristling wasps. Even though the shortest poem is about love and not about our closed eyes, uncertain the hummingbird was never there. As part of doing research for books like Underground Heart, which can take years and years and years, it involves not only visiting unusual sites like Waco Tanks or, again, the Atomic Bomb Museum in Albuquerque, but also actually going into a traditional library and digging and looking at old documents and books and records and photographs. I wrote this poem after years of research for Renaming the Earth, the most recent nonfiction book. The Long Library. In the long library, I found the clay bowls. They were stacked in dust, hundreds of them on shelves that changed the horizon. I wanted to touch the ancient jars, but was held back by an air that hit my lungs, and I saw the hands of the people would hold the stored jars until the world came to an end. In the long library, I unrolled parchments that confused me with stick figures running for their lives. I stared at events I was not supposed to witness, and I dropped the past into those glass containers. In the long library, I read maps left behind by men who couldn't cross the river without looking at the black trees they did not mark. There are maps showing there is more than one way out. In the long library, I fingered statues cold to the touch, their twisted faces melting into my palms like a warning that I had gone too far. The hallway behind me whispering that I could step across and become something I was not. In the long library, I found the passage I had been looking for. It read, "Things you leave out in the rain reappear inside. Mountains you carry in your pocket turn to dust at the end of the dirt road." In the long library, I closed the yellow book, crossed the hallway, and paid the fee to step outside. Maybe one more new poem, and then I'll finish with some older poems. This is called Last Night. Last night I thought the Martians came. Don't laugh. It was only me, waking from a dream where my father was dying, spinning out of the heavens to ask forgiveness for staying up there too long. Last night I was his son, and he lifted me in his arms before he hit the earth. The explosion was amazing, and I woke up with a beard on my face. Last night I slept as if I was the last man in the family, an old, confused stranger trying every locked door, unable to get in. I kept sleeping when the man finally entered through the broken window, shards of glass in his hair as blinding as the stars. This final sequence. This poem is based on a painting by a friend of mine from New Mexico, and he did the cover for an older book of poems of mine. The Hog Temple at Tierra Grande. I climbed the rocky slope and saw it, the Hog Temple in the trees, feathers hanging on arrows someone fired into the bark. I came closer and found the hawk perched there, waiting, its black head the eye of the messenger, its wings the color of my skin. I stood under the tied trees, wondered who did this, why they lashed the mighty pines together with rope, binding the hawk to its perch, leaving it there to blink and stare at me as if I was going to climb the tree. I got too close and tried to fly, its talons cutting into the branch, unable to free itself from the rope. I turned to run when I heard a sound, a cry I hear to this day, a motion of air to keep me from saying what I cannot say, the sight of the Hog Temple not telling me if I will find what I am looking for, its screech not sounding like it is going to be freed. This is called Celebrate. I'm going to carry my river to the end of the earth and celebrate. I am going to wear my hat that whisper to the mice under the floor. Not hesitate in asking the stars to quit burning so I can teach myself my own prayers for a change. When the car comes for me, I will get in and be taken away. The road will be full of birds, sparrows, and cardinals that flew away from me long ago. When I reach the moon, my father will already be there, wearing his own hat. He will send me back on the same river, my beard longer than the white hair on the head of the angriest God. I will set foot on the driest land, wait for the trees to grow and teach me how to live under their shade. I am going to love the places where I have never been, emerge from under those trees in time to greet the stranger who says to me, "Late, late, you are very late." And one more new poem, and I'll finish with one final poem. This is called Fragment. Listen, the guitar has stopped playing. You are safe. The white beard is gone. There is a window full of birds and a glass of water. Please listen. The guitar has fallen. The hard floor makes the strings vibrate. You are singing and the white figure is gone. There is a song you used to know, but the homebound train took it decades ago. Listen, the instrument you have been making lies on your table. You must touch it again before its intricate shape disappears. And the last poem. This is called My Brothers. My brothers lie under the darkened stones. When I wake them, they ask my name. When I answer, they disappear, and I keep polishing the stones. My brothers sleep under the stones. When I interpret their dreams, the cracks in the ground grow flowers, and I'm no longer alone. My brothers travel under the rocks. When they pass under my feet, I move out of the way, and they pause, wait for me to take the wrong step. My brothers tell stories under the rubble. When I am left out of the legend, tree roots grow to the horizon, their underground roads never crossing my path. My brothers hold hands under the stones. When they grip tighter, the world wants to end. When they let go, I run to stand under a huge cottonwood in an open field. My brothers are missing under those rocks. When I build a house where I last saw them, no one wants to visit because there are always voices coming out of the walls. My brothers are tired of being mistaken for stones. When I throw another armful in the pile, their widows takes years to select one pebble in their hands before walking away. My brothers seek justice under the stones. When I start digging with a shovel, they shift their skeletal bones to trick me into thinking I have dug out their hearts. My brothers rattle the space under the rocks. Their history will be uncovered someday, but there are many rivers that flow without a name. My brothers lie under the darkened stones. When they tell me to join them, I say, I am finally coming, and a new continent rises out of the earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ray. That was great. On behalf of the entire English department at TCU, thanks for sharing your work with us today and for being a part of these awards. I know it's very important to all of us to celebrate really the wonderful writing community that we have here at TCU, and I'm glad that you were here to share that with us. We have copies of Ray's works. All of his books are for sale from the TCU bookstore. We have a table at the back. He will be available to sign the books after the reading, so please check them out.